$25,000, 1 acre, 5 animals, and not one single dollar of it borrowed. Most people hear that number and assume it has to be a lie, a gimmick, or someone's lucky exception. It isn't, and by the end of this video, that exact math gets proven step by step, dollar by dollar. No giant operation, no bank loan, no hired help, and no land beyond what most suburban houses already sit on. Just a proven stacking system quietly used by small farmers on plots most people would call too small to matter. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which 5 animals to run on that 1 acre. You will know precisely what each one earns and how they work together to keep cash flowing every month. Here is where most small landowners currently sit: 1 acre of land and mounting monthly bills to match. Feed costs, property taxes, fencing repairs, and at year's end, nothing much to actually show for it. That gap between spending and earning is exactly where most small operations quietly stall out for good. The average backyard farmer spends around $800 a year on feed and earns back maybe $200 in eggs. That isn't farming. That's simply an expensive hobby dressed up in overalls and chore boots. And none of that is really anyone's fault, since nobody ever walked them through the actual math. Nobody explained that a single animal on a single acre is basically guaranteed to lose money. One income stream means one bad season can wipe out an entire year of effort completely. Most small farmers sit 1 sick animal, 1 dry summer, or 1 feed price spike from quitting entirely. The frustrating part is that the information already exists and the underlying system genuinely works. Farmers running this exact model clear $25,000 a year on land smaller than most backyards. Nobody has been connecting those specific dots for most people until this breakdown right here. This system is not new, and it certainly is not some internet farming trend from a few years back. Farmers stacked animals on small plots of land for centuries before industrial agriculture ever took over. That was true before factory farms existed, and before regulators started deciding what counted as viable. Ordinary families fed themselves and generated real income from a single acre using smarter methods. They understood that animals work together, and that one animal's waste becomes another animal's feed. Rotating species across the same ground builds soil instead of slowly destroying it over time. A small piece of land, managed with the right livestock mix, outproduces any single crop monoculture ever could. Then, commercial agriculture arrived and completely rewrote that entire story for most small farmers. Once that pattern becomes visible, it becomes obvious why so many small farms feel stuck. Feed companies needed customers buying bags, dependent entirely on their supply chains and their systems. A truly self-sufficient farmer on 1 acre made for a genuinely terrible customer in that model. So this knowledge quietly got buried, replaced by advice to specialize in one thing and buy everything else. Nobody hands out this kind of breakdown for free, which is exactly why it happens right here. For decades, that strategy worked out well for the companies selling feed and supplies. But here is what none of that marketing could actually erase. The underlying math still works. The biology still works exactly the same way it always has for generations of farmers before now. Animals still convert forage, scraps, and pasture into meat, eggs, milk, and fertilizer reliably. 1 acre stacked correctly with 5 complementary animals still produces $25,000 in profit. Someone simply needed to walk through the actual numbers clearly, which is exactly what happens next. Every animal on this list earns its place for a specific, deliberate reason within the system. The 5th animal is the one most small farmers completely overlook, yet it alone adds $6,000 yearly. First, meat rabbits, quietly the most underrated moneymaker on this entire list of 5 animals. Most people dismiss rabbits as pets, or at best, a mild backyard novelty item. Serious small-scale farmers know rabbits return more per square foot than almost any other livestock available. They also require almost no pasture space at all compared to larger grazing animals. That erased knowledge is exactly what modern stacked farming rediscovers and puts back to work. Here is the actual math behind running rabbits as a real income stream on small land. A single doe produces 4 to 5 litters per year, with each litter averaging 7 to 8 kits. At harvest weight of 5 pounds live and roughly 2.5 pounds dressed, the totals add up fast. That works out to 140 to 160 pounds of meat per doe annually. Selling that at $6 to $8 per pound generates $840 to $1,280 per doe. Run 6 does, and $1 on a small hutch system using less than 200 square feet total. That setup alone produces $5,000 to $7,500 per year from rabbits. Seeing that pattern laid out clearly is usually the moment real change starts to happen. Feed costs for that same group run roughly $600 to $800 annually with garden scraps included. Net profit comfortably lands somewhere between $5,000 and $6,000 from rabbits alone. Here is what makes rabbits even smarter than those raw numbers already suggest on their own. Rabbit manure is the only livestock manure that goes straight onto a garden without any composting required. It will not burn plants, and it carries strong nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium content naturally. Rotate rabbit hutches over garden beds and free fertilizer arrives, while premium protein gets produced simultaneously. Zero extra land required, zero grazing pressure added, purely stacked profit on top of everything else running. Second, layer hens, quietly functioning as the $4,800 engine that runs itself daily. Every dollar earned this way stacks directly on top of whatever else the acre already produces. That single number, $6,000 from one overlooked animal, is worth sitting with for a moment. Chickens are already familiar to most people, but rarely run the way this particular model requires. Most backyard keepers buy commercial feed, collect eggs, sell a few dozen to neighbors, and stop there. That approach leaves serious money sitting on the table without anyone realizing it. Here is the model that actually generates real returns from a flock of laying hens. 50 layer hens on a quarter acre of properly rotating pasture makes up the entire setup. That flock size stays manageable, with one person handling daily care in under 30 minutes. At peak production, a quality breed like Isa Brown or Highline averages 45 to 47 eggs daily. That works out to roughly 320 dozen eggs produced every single month from that flock. Selling at $5 to $6 per dozen generates $1,600 to $1,900 monthly in revenue. Feed costs for 50 hens run approximately $80 to $100 per month on commercial feed. This is exactly where the stacked system starts paying off in ways a single flock never could. Hens rotating behind rabbits scratch through manure, eat fly larvae, and break the parasite cycle naturally. That process also fertilizes pasture directly, which drops the feed bill by roughly 20% overall. Net monthly profit lands between $1,200 and $1,500 from that single flock alone. Annually, that works out to $14,400 to $18,000 from 50 hens on a quarter acre. That single detail about manure alone often changes how people think about raising rabbits at all. That number alone does not reach $25,000, so 3 more animals still matter here. The remaining 3 animals do not just add income, they also reduce the costs of everything already running. Third, meat chickens, specifically Cornish Cross broilers, running on an 8-week cash cycle. Layer hens deliver a steady monthly income stream, while meat chickens deliver a fast, timeable cash cycle. Cornish Cross broilers go from day-old chick to full harvest weight in just 8 weeks total. Each chick costs roughly $5 to $6, with feed running $12 to $15 per bird over that period. Total input cost per bird lands somewhere around $17 to $21 all in. Selling live weight at $4 to $5 per pound, a 6-pound bird brings $24 to $30. Processed and sold at $6 to $8 per pound, that same bird brings up to $48. Running 50 birds per batch across 3 batches yearly, spring, early summer, and fall, totals 150 birds. Revenue lands between $3,600 and $7,200 annually from that full cycle. Input costs run $2,550 to $3,150 across the same period. Net profit ends up somewhere between $1,000 and $4,000, depending on market and processing method. Meat chickens genuinely require more hands-on work than layers, and processing day is far from glamorous. Numbers like these are exactly why rabbits deserve a serious second look from anyone with spare shed space. Still, for an 8-week commitment, the return per hour of labor is genuinely hard to beat. Rotating hens behind rabbits is a small habit that pays back far more than it costs to set up. The real power of meat chickens in this system comes from what they do to the land itself. Run them through a portable chicken tractor, and they mow, fertilize, and pest control pasture simultaneously. By the time the third batch finishes in fall, pasture condition improves compared to how spring started. Fourth, pigs, functioning as the $3,000 cleanup crew that requires almost no dedicated feed budget. That compounding effect is exactly why 5 small streams beat one large risky one. That kind of layered thinking is what separates a genuine system from a random collection of animals. 2 pigs cover this entire part of the system, not a full herd or commercial operation. 2 feeder pigs raised from 8 weeks old reach harvest weight within 5 to 6 months total. Pigs belong here because they eat practically everything without much complaint at all. Vegetable scraps, spent garden produce, whey from cheese making, and stale bakery bread all work as feed. Many bakeries hand that bread over free or nearly free just to avoid disposal costs themselves. In a stacked system, pigs function as the cleanup crew converting waste into premium protein. Buying 2 feeder pigs in spring runs $75 to $150 each up front. Feed costs over 5 to 6 months, heavily supplemented with free inputs, run $200 to $350 per pig. Total investment per pig lands between $275 and $500 all included. A well-fed pig reaches 250 to 280 pounds live weight at harvest. Dressed weight comes in around 180 to 200 pounds per animal. That 8-week turnaround is what makes broilers useful for covering short-term expenses quickly. Selling direct to consumers at $4 to $6 per pound hanging weight brings $720 to $1,200. 2 pigs a year generates $1,440 to $2,400 in total revenue. Net profit after all inputs lands between $900 and $1,800 from that pair. Those numbers alone will not retire anyone. But pigs contribute far more than their raw sale price suggests. Run pigs across a section of acreage needing clearing or cultivation and watch them go straight to work. They root, turn soil, eliminate weeds, and leave behind some of the richest ground available for planting. Pigs essentially function as free land preparation that would otherwise cost real money in equipment rental. What might cost $500 in tractor rental, 2 pigs accomplish in 60 days before becoming dinner. Fifth and final, Coturnix quail, the animal almost nobody thinks to include in this kind of system. This was genuinely the animal that surprised everyone most the first time these numbers got calculated. Coturnix quail begin laying at just 6 to 8 weeks of age, remarkably early for any bird. Stacking hens behind rabbits like this is the kind of detail most backyard keepers never even consider. Compare that to chickens, which typically take 18 to 24 weeks before laying even begins. Quail lay up to 300 eggs per bird each year under proper conditions. Their eggs sell at farmers markets for $6 to $10 per dozen, well above standard chicken egg prices. That premium exists because quail eggs are considered a genuine specialty product by most buyers. A pasture that improves instead of degrading is worth almost as much as the meat itself. Here is the actual math behind running 50 quail as part of this stacked system. 50 quail consume roughly the same feed as 6 to 8 standard chickens combined. Monthly feed bill for that flock runs just $20 to $25 total. At 40 eggs daily from 50 birds, that works out to roughly 85 dozen eggs monthly. At $7 per dozen, that generates $595 in monthly revenue. Subtracting $20 in monthly feed cost leaves a net profit of roughly $575. Annually, that comes out to $6,900 from 50 birds fitting inside a garden shed-sized structure. Quail also cycle fast for meat, reaching harvest weight in just 5 to 6 weeks total. A dressed quail sells for $4 to $6 at specialty markets, butchers, and restaurants. Adding a meat cycle alongside egg production could push that same operation to $8,000 or $9,000 annually. Starting with eggs first and building a market before adding meat production tends to work best. Quail stay quiet, produce minimal odor, need very little space, and command genuinely premium prices. They rank as the most efficient protein and income producer per square foot of any animal on this list. They also fit perfectly into a 1-acre system since they take up almost no space at all. There was a spring when selling the entire property felt like the only remaining option. Free bakery bread alone can meaningfully offset a large portion of total feed costs for pigs. 3 years in, running chickens, a small garden, and a couple of pigs, the effort felt constant. Watching a pasture come back to life is proof this system builds soil instead of stripping it. Every season ended the same way, sitting down with a notebook trying to figure out where profit went. It never added up correctly, no matter how the numbers got rearranged on paper. Feed bills kept climbing, while egg money barely covered what was already being spent. Pigs brought in a little money, but most of summer went into hauling feed and fixing fences. Telling a spouse that small farms probably could not generate real money felt like the honest conclusion. Then, an older farmer at a county fair changed that entire outlook within a single conversation. He had clearly been doing this for decades and rarely spoke unless he genuinely meant something. An 8-week cycle timed against real expenses is what separates a hobby from an actual business. Showing him the actual numbers led to about 30 seconds of silence before he responded. He simply said the land was running one thing at a time when it should be running 5. That single sentence changed the entire direction of everything that followed after that fair. Research into stacked livestock systems began that same week, driven entirely by that one comment. Quail joined the operation that fall, just 30 birds in a small hutch beside the coop. Within 8 weeks they were already laying, faster than anyone expected going into it. Within 3 months, a waiting list of customers formed, paying $8 a dozen for those eggs. Land a tractor would take a full day to prepare. 2 pigs handle over several weeks instead. The following spring, meat rabbits joined the mix. 6 does, and 1 buck in a simple hutch. That hutch got built from reclaimed lumber for under $200 total. By year's end, the operation had shifted from losing money to generating over $19,000 in net profit. All of that happened on the exact same acre that had been worked for 3 straight years already. No additional land got purchased, and no loan was ever taken out to make any of it happen. The only real change was running a connected system instead of one animal at a time. That is exactly the shift worth aiming for on any small piece of land right now. Free land prep from an animal that also feeds itself is about as close to a win-win as farming gets. Before rushing out to buy every animal on this list, a few mistakes are worth avoiding first. First mistake, launching all 5 animals simultaneously, which means 5 learning curves running at once. Building 5 enclosures before a single animal earns any money creates unnecessary stress fast. Starting with 2 animals, getting comfortable, then adding the next one tends to work far better. Second mistake, underpricing product out of fear. Selling eggs at $2.50 a dozen despite doing everything right. Local, pasture-raised, premium product deserves premium pricing that reflects its actual quality. Knowing true production costs and pricing clearly above them matters every single time a sale happens. Third mistake, ignoring pasture rotation entirely, since the same animals on the same ground destroy land fast. That premium price point is exactly why quail eggs move so quickly at farmers' markets. That kind of demand is exactly why building a waiting list beats chasing new buyers constantly. Parasites build up, soil compacts, and pasture disappears within a single season without proper rotation. Rotating every species on a 3 to 4 week cycle keeps land improving year after year instead. Fourth mistake, scaling before building a market. Raising far too many broilers before finding buyers for them. Building a customer base first, selling a small batch, then scaling up avoids that exact trap. Every animal that cannot be sold represents a pure, unnecessary loss on the books. Pigs quietly doing a tractor's job for free is the kind of detail that changes how land gets used. Fifth mistake, tracking revenue instead of actual profit across the entire operation. Chickens might show $18,000 in sales, but after feed, bedding, processing, and labor, real profit shrinks fast. Tracking every single input cost from day one reveals what actually gets kept at year's end. Farmers winning on 1 acre are rarely the ones running the most animals overall. Momentum from one small addition often makes the next one feel far less intimidating to attempt. They tend to be the ones running the tightest numbers and tracking every cost carefully. Picture what this exact system looks like 3 years after it first gets started properly. Pasture stays healthier than the day the whole project began, under this kind of rotation. Animals cycle nutrients back into soil, steadily reducing input costs with every passing year. Feed bills keep dropping because land itself produces more usable forage over time. A reclaimed lumber hutch proves this system does not require significant upfront capital to start. Rabbit hutches are fully paid off, and the quail setup, costing just $300, keeps printing money. A shed-sized structure producing that much income is hard to match with any other animal. Dependence on a grocery store for protein disappears, along with dependence on any single supply chain. A single bad season no longer threatens the entire operation, since 5 separate income streams exist. Those 5 streams feed each other's systems and cover each other's slower seasons throughout the year. That shift from losing money to genuine profit happened without buying a single extra acre. The financial picture gets cleaner with every single year that passes under this kind of management. Year 1 focuses on building and learning the actual rhythm of running 5 animals together. Year 2 typically becomes genuinely profitable once the early mistakes get worked out completely. Year 3 shifts toward optimizing costs, raising prices, and expanding into direct market relationships. Adding a meat processing setup at that stage can increase overall margin by roughly 40%. Avoiding these mistakes early on saves years of frustration compared to learning them the hard way. Farmers running this kind of model rarely talk about quitting. They talk about what comes next instead. That confidence, knowing 1 acre works as hard as its owner does, matters more than any single number. Every year that same acre works a little harder than the year before it did. Here is a genuine question worth sitting with right now regarding any small piece of land. How many income streams are actually being stacked on that land at this exact moment? Pricing confidently from the start avoids years of underselling a genuinely premium product. If the honest answer is only 1 or 2, the next step becomes obvious immediately. A shed-sized structure quietly outproducing a full-sized coop is not something most people expect. Picking 1 animal from this list not currently being raised is a solid place to start. That single conversation at a fair is the kind of moment that quietly changes an entire operation. Rotation is not optional extra work. It is what keeps this entire system viable long-term. Building the system 1 layer at a time avoids the mistake of launching everything simultaneously. $25,000 is not some hard ceiling. It functions as a realistic starting point instead. That kind of surprise is exactly why quail rarely get mentioned until someone actually runs the numbers. That number belongs to a farmer who genuinely understands how to run this kind of system well. Selling out a small first batch quickly is a far better problem than unsold birds piling up. So here is the real question. Which of these 5 animals would go onto your acre first? Drop that answer in the comments below, since every single one gets read and considered. Real profit only becomes visible once every single cost gets tracked honestly from day 1. Lower feed bills over time free up cash that can go straight toward expanding the operation. That specific $25,000 figure is a floor for a well-run system, not a ceiling. If this video made 1 acre feel like real potential instead of wasted space, hit subscribe. A single conversation at a county fair rarely changes an entire operation, except when it does. New breakdowns covering real farming numbers and real strategies go up every single week without exception. That kind of shift, from 1 animal at a time to 5 working together, rarely happens by accident. 5 income streams covering each other's weak points is what makes this system genuinely resilient. Every mistake avoided early on is a full season of frustration that never has to happen at all. Tight numbers consistently outperform sheer animal count when it comes to actual take-home profit. Pricing a premium product like a premium product is a decision, not something that happens automatically. Sometimes it takes 1 blunt sentence from a stranger to reveal what was obvious all along. A rotation schedule followed consistently is worth more than almost any other single decision made here. Go take a genuine look at that acre and start making it work as hard as it possibly can. Building demand before scaling up is the difference between a sold-out batch and a freezer full of loss. Consistent weekly effort across a full year adds up to far more than any single big push could. Real profit only shows up once every cost gets written down honestly, including the ones easy to forget. Every year this system runs, the next year's decisions get a little easier to make with confidence. A healthier pasture after 3 years is proof the system is working exactly as intended. A healthier acre after 3 years is proof this system rewards patience more than brute effort.